All right, let's dive right into this. We're here for a focused briefing on the RBI's game-changing new directions for NBFCs. We're going to break down the entire scale-based regulation framework, specifically for senior professionals like you who need to get the strategic picture and fast. And just so you know, as we go, you'll see a little progress meter on each slide to help keep us on track.
Here's a quick look at our agenda for today. We'll start big with the new framework, then we'll really get into what scale-based regulation means. After that, we'll walk through the 4 layers, talk capital rules, cover who's exempt, and then wrap it all up with the strategic implications for your business.
So let's start with the big picture. What you need to understand right from the get-go is that these RBI directions represent a complete architectural overhaul. I mean it. This is not just another incremental update. It's a fundamental reimagining of the entire regulatory landscape for every single NBFC in India. Okay, now let's get to the heart of it. What exactly is this scale-based regulation framework, or SBR, that everyone's talking about? This is the core logic, the new engine that's going to determine just how much regulatory heat your firm is going to face. So, the single most crucial point is this. SBR completely scraps the old one-size-fits-all approach. Gone. The regulator is now shifting to a much smarter, risk-calibrated system. It's all about slotting NBFCs into 4 very distinct layers, and each layer comes with its own specific level of regulatory scrutiny. First up, at the very foundation, you've got the base layer. You can think of this as the ground floor, really. It's designed for NBFCs with a lower systemic risk profile. We're talking mainly about smaller non-deposit-taking entities, and some specific types, like peer-to-peer lenders and account aggregators. Okay, moving up a level, we hit the middle layer. Now, this is where things start to get more serious, and the regulatory intensity really kicks in. This layer automatically captures all deposit-taking NBFCs, the bigger non-deposit players, and even certain categories like housing finance companies right from the start. Next up is the upper layer. Now, this one's different. You don't just land here by default. This is for a very select group of NBFCs that the RBI specifically identifies through a scoring system. Why? Because their size and importance mean they need enhanced, almost bank-like supervision. And finally, at the very peak, we have the top layer. Now, here's the interesting thing. This layer is ideally supposed to stay empty. It's really a contingency plan. It's for an NBFC from the upper layer whose potential systemic risk is judged to have become so extreme that it triggers the absolute highest level of supervision possible. Okay, so we know the what. Now for the how. How precisely does an NBFC get placed into one layer versus another? The criteria are incredibly specific, and trust me, they carry some pretty significant strategic implications. Let's dig in. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Look at that hard threshold. For any non-deposit-taking NBFC, that 1,000 crore rupee asset size is the bright line in the sand. The moment you cross it, you're automatically bumped up from the base layer into the much, much more stringent middle layer. This literally makes asset growth a direct trigger for a higher regulatory burden. And this is a real game changer, especially for any of you in a group with multiple NBFC licenses. The RBI is no longer going to look at each of your entities in a silo. From now on, it will consolidate the total assets of all NBFCs within your group to figure out if that 1,000 crore threshold has been breached. Let's look at an example because this really drives the point home. See that NBFC ICC and the NBFC MFI? On their own, with assets of 300 and 100 crore, they are firmly in the base layer, no question. But because the group's total consolidated assets are over 1,000 crore, both of them get pulled up into the middle layer's much stricter regulatory regime. Your group structure is now, officially, a central regulatory concern. All right, so getting into the upper layer, that's a whole different ballgame. It's not about a simple asset threshold. It's based on a parametric score. Think of it as a data-driven exercise with a heavy 70% weighting on quantitative, measurable factors. The numbers really do the talking here. So what exactly is the RBI measuring? Well, this table breaks it down. You can see the highest weights by far are given to size and leverage and, crucially, interconnectedness. It's crystal clear what the regulator is focused on, just how big is an NBFC, and how deeply is it tangled up with the rest of the financial system. Okay, let's pivot now and talk about something that hits the balance sheet directly, the new capital rules. We're seeing a significant hike in the minimum capital requirements for both registration and ongoing operations. What you're looking at here is the mandated non-negotiable glide path for key NBFC types. We're talking investment and credit companies, microfinance institutions, and factors. The net-owned fund requirement is being harmonized and jacked up to a new floor of 10 crore rupees by March 31st, 2027. This means your capital planning needs to start, well, yesterday.
And just to put that 10 crore figure into perspective, look at the comparison here. It really highlights the activity-based nature of this new regulation. While entities like P2P platforms can still operate with 2 crore, you have specialized institutions like infrastructure finance companies facing a much higher bar of 300 crore.
Now, there's another really important new rule about foreign investment, and it all comes down to this one specific definition. This concept of significant influence, which, as you know, is typically pegged at a 20% voting power threshold, has just become a key regulatory checkpoint for where your investors are coming from.
So here's the bottom line, a brand new hard cap. Any fresh investment, whether it's direct or indirect, that comes from a jurisdiction that the Financial Action Task Force, or FAF, has deemed non-compliant, cannot acquire significant influence. The total aggregate voting power for any new investors from these places is now capped at just under 20%. Full stop. Now, while these new rules are pretty sweeping, they don't apply to absolutely everyone. For your strategic planning, it's absolutely crucial to know exactly which entities and activities get a specific pass from these provisions.
So here's a quick look at the main exemptions. You can see specialized entities like securitization and reconstruction companies, as well as NIDI and CHIT companies. They're all carved out from some key provisions of the RBI Act. And, maybe most importantly, this slide confirms that these new directions repeal and supersede everything that came before them. This document is now the single source of truth. All right, we've gone through the what and the how. Let's wrap up with the most important part for everyone here, the so what. How do you take these regulatory changes and turn them from just another compliance headache into a real competitive advantage? So, the bottom line is this. These rules demand a fundamental rethink of your strategy. Growth for growth's sake? That's over. Asset size is now a regulatory trigger. Thinking about your companies as standalone entities? That's not going to work anymore. And capital planning? It just became a multi-year strategic imperative. For the market as a whole, this framework is absolutely going to fuel a wave of M&A and consolidation. And so I want to leave you with this one question, because this really is the core strategic challenge that these new RBI directions pose to every single NBFC board and leadership team out there. Answering this question proactively is what's going to separate the winners from the losers in this new landscape.